The final school bell had rung nearly an hour ago, and the once noisy building had fallen into an unusual silence. 14-year-old Ian stepped out of his classroom with his backpack slung over one shoulder, his footsteps echoing through the long empty hallway. Most of the students had already gone home, laughing and talking as they rushed out the gates earlier. Ian had stayed behind to finish a science project with his teacher, and he hadn't realized how late it had gotten until he looked outside and saw the sky turning gray. As he pushed open the heavy school gate, a cold breeze brushed across his face. The street outside felt strangely quiet. Normally the road would be full of students walking home together, bikes passing by, and the distant noise of traffic. But today it felt different, almost too still. Ian adjusted his bag and began walking toward home. His house was about 20 minutes away, and the quickest way was through a narrow road behind the old playground and past an abandoned building that everyone at school whispered about. Some students claimed they had seen strange shadows near it at night, while others said they heard footsteps when no one was there. Ian had always laughed at those stories. As he walked past the empty playground, the rusty swings moved slowly back and forth, creaking softly in the wind. Ian paused for a moment, watching them. There was no one there. Then suddenly, he heard something behind him. A slow, quiet sound. Footsteps. Ian's heart began to beat faster as the sound of footsteps echoed faintly behind him. At first, he tried to ignore it, convincing himself it was just the sound of his own shoes hitting the pavement. But the rhythm felt wrong. When he slowed down, the footsteps slowed too. When he stopped, the sound disappeared completely. Ian slowly turned around. The road behind him was empty. The dim streetlights had just started turning on, casting long shadows across the quiet road. The cold wind moved through the empty playground nearby, making the rusty swings creak softly again. For a moment, everything looked normal. Ian took a deep breath and laughed nervously. "It's nothing," he muttered to himself. He turned back around and started walking again. Step. 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 The sound returned. This time it was clearer. Someone was definitely walking behind him. Ian's stomach tightened with fear. He quickly turned around again, expecting to see another student or maybe someone walking home late like him. But the street was still completely empty. Confused and frightened, Ian looked down at the ground under the streetlight. His shadow stretched long across the pavement in front of him. But then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. There was another shadow beside his. It was taller, longer, and slightly twisted. Ian slowly lifted his head and looked around again. There was still no one there. Yet the second shadow moved slightly, as if it were alive. A cold whisper suddenly drifted through the air behind him. "Why are you walking alone?" Ian's heart pounded in his chest the moment he heard the whisper. Fear rushed through his body, and without thinking, he started running down the narrow street. His backpack bounced against his back as his shoes slapped loudly against the pavement. The sound of footsteps behind him returned instantly, louder and faster now, as if whatever was following him had begun to chase. The abandoned building stood ahead like a dark shadow against the evening sky. Its broken windows looked like empty eyes staring into the street. Ian had heard many stories about this place at school, stories about strange sounds, moving shadows, and people who felt watched when they passed by. He had always thought those stories were just rumors. But now, with the footsteps growing closer, the building suddenly felt like the only place he could hide. Breathing heavily, Ian rushed through the half-open door and stumbled inside. The air was cold and smelled like dust and old wood. Pieces of broken furniture were scattered across the floor, and the faint sound of wind whistled through the cracked windows. He quickly crouched behind a broken table in the corner, trying to stay as quiet as possible. His chest rose and fell rapidly as he struggled to control his breathing. For a moment, everything became silent again. Ian hoped whatever had been following him had disappeared. Then the front door slowly creaked open. The sound echoed through the empty building. Heavy footsteps entered the room. Ian slowly peeked over the table. And that's when he saw a tall, dark figure standing in the hallway, its glowing red eyes staring directly toward him. The moment Ian saw the glowing red eyes staring at him from the dark hallway, his body froze with terror. The tall shadow slowly stepped forward, its shape stretching unnaturally across the cracked walls and broken floor. It didn't walk like a normal person. Its body moved like smoke, twisting and shifting as if it wasn't completely solid. Ian tried to move, but his legs felt heavy, as if fear had glued him to the ground. The creature's glowing eyes never blinked. They remained fixed on him, watching every small movement he made. The shadow tilted its head slowly, studying him. A cold voice echoed through the empty building, deep and distorted, almost like many whispers speaking at once. "You can run, but fear always follows." Ian backed away, his hands shaking. What are you?" he asked weakly. The creature's long arms stretched across the floor toward him, its fingers thin and unnatural. "I am what grows in the dark corners of fear." The temperature in the room seemed to drop as the shadow came closer. Ian's breathing became faster. Every scary story he had ever heard rushed through his mind. The more afraid he felt, the stronger the creature seemed to become. Its shadow grew darker, spreading across the walls. Then suddenly Ian remembered something his father once told him when he was younger. Fear becomes powerful only when you keep feeding it. Ian slowly stood up, forcing himself to stop shaking. He wiped the tears from his eyes and looked directly at the glowing red eyes. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," he said. For the first time, the shadow hesitated. For a few seconds, the tall shadow remained completely still. Its glowing red eyes flickered slightly as if something inside it had become unstable. Ian stood there, forcing himself not to step back. His heart was still racing, but he refused to run again. The creature had grown stronger every time he felt fear, and now he understood that running would only make it worse. The shadow slowly pulled its long arm back. The darkness around its body began to tremble, like smoke being blown away by the wind. Its glowing eyes dimmed as it stared at Ian, almost as if it was confused. "You are not afraid?" the creature whispered in a broken voice. Ian swallowed nervously but kept looking straight at it. "No," he said quietly. "You only exist because I was scared." The moment those words left his mouth, the shadow let out a low, fading sound. Its tall figure began to shrink, the darkness peeling away from its body like mist disappearing in the morning sun. The red glow in its eyes slowly faded until there was nothing left but empty air. Within seconds, the building became silent again. Ian stood there for a moment, making sure the creature was truly gone. Then he slowly walked outside. The night air felt calmer now, and the streetlights shone softly across the empty road. He took a deep breath and started walking toward home again. This time, he didn't rush, and he didn't look behind him. But somewhere in the quiet darkness, a faint whisper still drifted through the wind, waiting for someone else who might be afraid.